What's going on, vinyl community? Welcome to another video with the Record Spinner. In today's video, I'm going to be doing what I basically hinted at doing, and many people resounded with this idea, and it just so happens to be the 50th anniversary of this album since it came out 50 years ago on this day, March 19th. I am going to be doing a vinyl pressing and mix comparison of Jethro Tull's Aqualung, and the two pressings I'm going to be using for this comparison are the Analog Productions UHQR pressing and the Steven Wilson remix pressing. Now, just to refresh those that aren't aware, the UHQR pressing of Aqualung is perhaps the most impressive sounding pressing that is out there of this album. This is the original mix mastered from the original master tape by Chris Bellman, cut at 45 RPM and spread over 2 LPs, pressed on Clarity vinyl. I did a whole video talking about this pressing and my thoughts on it if you want to go ahead and check it out. And then there is the Steven Wilson remix pressing. Now, this is an entirely different mix of the album that Steven Wilson did for the album back in 2011 for its 40th anniversary. This is mastered, obviously, from a digital file, cut at 33 1/3 RPM, pressed on 1 LP on standard black vinyl. So in terms of getting your hands on a modern pressing of this album, it is going to be between these two, and we are going to see what reigns as superior and also what the differences are between the mixes. Now, in terms of the audio capture for the needle drops featured in this comparison, I connected my U-Turn Pluto preamp to my Yamaha digital recorder and recorded everything uncompressed at 96 24-bit with absolutely no EQ, so this is a pure flat transfer, and of course synced up to the footage of the records being played in real time. Now, obviously, as you can tell by the length of this video, no songs are featured in their full length, just the first verse and chorus of the main songs that make up the album. And then after the needle drops, I will provide my observations of the pressings and the mixes. So, without further ado, sit back, listen, observe for yourself, and enjoy.
Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent. Sun's running down his nose, greasy fingers smearing shabby clothes. Hey, Aqualung, drying in the cold sun, watching as the pretty panties run. Hey, Aqualung, like a dead duck, spitting out pieces of his broken love. Oh, Aqualung, sun streaking. Oh, would be a poor man, a beggar man, a thief, if he had a rich man in his hand, and go and steal the candy from a laughing baby's mouth, if he could take it from the money man. Outside Mary, I goes jumping in again. She signs no contract, but she always plays the game. Dimes in hands, the village on expense accounting rule, and the jackknife barber drops her off at school. Hey, laughing in the playground.
As I did walk by Hampstead Fair, I came upon Mother Goose. So I turned her loose as she was screaming. And a foreign student said to me, was it really true There are elephants and lions too in Piccadilly Circus. Walk down by the bathing pond to try and catch some sun. Saw at least 100 schoolgirls sobbing into handkerchiefs as one. I don't believe they knew I was a schoolboy. And a bearded lady said, I'll take her to the cinema and leave you in a wimpy bar. You tell me that we've gone too far, come running up to me. Make the scene at Cousin Jack's, leave him to put the bottles back. Mends his glasses that are cracked, well that's one up to me. Hey. So lean upon him gently and don't call on him to save. You from your social graces, oh, and the sins you used to wave. You used to wave. The bloody Church of England in chains of history requests your earthly presence at the vicarage for tea. A Father high in heaven, smile down upon your son. Yeah. Was busy with his money games, oh, his women and his guns. Ah, Jesus save me. And the unsung. In the shuffling madness of the locomotive breath runs the all-time loser headlong to his death. Oh, it feels a piston scraping, steam breaking on his brow. Old Charlie stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going. No, it just slowed down. He sees his children jump. How'd you dare to tell me that I'm a fire?
Okay, so you heard the sound samples, now let's compare. Now, the one thing to always remember is that the original mix of an album is always going to be the blueprint of what is to come with things such as stereo remixes in the future. And luckily, with Steven Wilson's remixes, whether it be for Jethro Tull, Yes, or King Crimson, or any band that he works with, he always remains as true in spirit to the original, so there are certainly no liberties taken or any radical differences. But in regards to the original mix, when Jethro Tull was working on Aqualung, they recorded at the newly built Island Studios, which was built out of an old church and was completely renovated. And apparently some of the equipment was brand new. No one knew how to work it and how things were going to sound sonically. And the studio monitors that they were working with weren't properly calibrated. So perhaps that's why I feel that the original mix was lacking a bit of bottom end. But the bass tone is rather unique, but on the upside, I feel that the instrument separation across the soundstage of this UHQR pressing was absolutely cinematic and wide. The acoustic guitars and vocals are very direct sounding, the flute has a very airy quality, and the drums are very thumping. Now, we can go on about how everything sounds, but the reality is that since this was mastered at 45 RPM, you are able to get more detail from the source, so that plays a huge part as well. And with it being pressed on Clarity vinyl, it was an absolutely quiet pressing, not a tick or pop was heard. Now on to the Steven Wilson remix, and the biggest notable difference in terms of this mix is that the remix has a bit of a bright shrill to it, which isn't a bad thing since it isn't quite ear grating. It just sounds more brighter, especially after listening to the original mix, which I kind of felt had a bit of a murky sound to it. I sensed a lot of the same tonalities in the instruments between both mixes, but with this remix, the bass definition in the bottom end is much improved, and I feel that this mix slash pressing just has a bit more air in the overall recording. Now, this could be down to anything, whether it be working with the multi-tracks before things got bounced onto another tape reel, or simply applying a little EQ to each element of the mix. Steven Wilson has said that upon transferring the multi-tracks digitally, what he found sounded much better than what the original mix would suggest. So perhaps working in the digital realm relieves a lot of the issues that came during the recording and mixing of the original. The one drawback of this remixed pressing falls solely on the pressing itself. I noticed a little bit of intergroup distortion towards the end of the sides, but if you were listening to it in a room with the proper, acoustical treatment, these kind of nuances tend to get lost. But when I was listening to the needle drops, that's where it really set in. But it's not too bad of a quality to bring this rather impressive pressing down. Now, the big question is, which pressing reigns as superior? Now, as always, it is subjective to the human ear, and while the UHQR pressing is the ultimate analog experience of this album, I do feel that the Steven Wilson remix pressing is just as dynamic and bold as the UHQR. So honestly, I think it doesn't quite matter which way you swing when it comes to this album. If you bought the UHQR while it was still available, since it is now sold out, you have perhaps what is the greatest pressing of Aqualung in existence. But with that said, the Steven Wilson remix is a phenomenal sounding, affordable option since copies are still available. So definitely don't let the whole analog versus digital debate get to you. But also, music aside, both versions are packaged very well. With the UHQR pressing, it comes in a nice box. The album itself does come in a nice sort of textured tip-on style gatefold jacket. And as always, just for the sake of showing it off, pressed on Clarity vinyl and such. So this is just, it's an absolutely gorgeous pressing to behold. And then with the Steven Wilson remix, you do get a very nice booklet which comes with photos and liner notes talking about the making of the album and providing a little bit of backstory, which is quite an immersive read as you listen to the album. Now, which pressing did you guys think sounded the best? Do you have both of these pressings? What are your thoughts? Please leave a comment down below. I'd love to know. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support this channel, be sure to check me out on Patreon. See you guys in the next video. And most importantly, keep the records spinning.